So this afternoon we are going to really focus on lots of practical stuff. And I'm doing all of this with the assumption that you have had a look at the online resources that was sent to you. Has anyone not had a chance to look at those? Oh, good. You've all had a look at it. So I thought probably the best use of our time this afternoon is really start putting those strategies and things into practice and talk about these things together. So we're going to start with just reviewing some of those strategies that you've seen online. We're going to tear apart a past assignment example, which got a high mark, but there's some things that could improve. We're going to really think about being critical, because being critical is actually a key part of what Peter's looking for in your work. So, what is that? We've probably read something in the resource, but we're just going to have a chat about it and think about what does that actually look like. And then we're going to have some time to really think about your first assignment and what the topic is, what your content is. This is where you can blast Peter with all those burning questions you've had. And then we're going to finish off with, hopefully, actually putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and blasting out a few things. So you're going to leave here, hopefully, with something concrete in your hand that you can continue with in your own time. Does that sound like a reasonable plan? Now, you're welcome to just ask me a question at any time. Okay, so I want this to be a dialogue. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do, now I've put the links up here, but what I'd like you to do is on your computers or your mobile device, actually click into your Building Your Study Skills, this online module, because we're actually going to refer to that this afternoon. So even if you don't have a computer, make sure you sit with somebody who does have access to it. And our first activity this afternoon is, I'm going to give you exactly 10 minutes, which doesn't sound like a long time, which isn't a long time, 10 minutes in your groups to think about what are the top 5 key factors of writing successfully. What do you think would be the top 5? And what I want each group to do, I'll give each group one piece of paper, and you've got some markers, and I'd like you to present your top 5 on the paper. Now you can just write them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can draw them, you can do a chart, but I'm going to give you 10 minutes to present what your top 5 are. Assignment. It did get a high grade, but there is a but there. So in this space, we can really pull it apart. And the person who gave me permission to use the assignment gave me permissions, but I've changed, obviously, a few details and things, so it can't be identified. So have a real deep look into this. Does it make sense? Have a chat with your group and just think about how are they structured? Is it clear? Is there anything in those paragraphs that you think, ooh, that just jars me for some reason, but I can't put my finger on it, but it jars me. Have a chat about why you think it jars you. I'd just like us to share our ideas, if that's okay, about these paragraphs. First of all, what do you think about them? Were they good, bad, ugly, clear, awful, okay? What was your general thinking about these paragraphs? Yes. Now, that's why I chose these paragraphs, because it does that really well. So what is it? I want to look at this specifically, because this is how I learnt how to write, because I really analysed in detail the words and phrases and how they did this. So how are the first and second paragraphs linked? Which words link those 2 paragraphs? Family violence. So it ends with, for example, the government's reform to address family violence. So that's like a little added extra. And then the next paragraph, addressing family violence. It's just a beautiful link there. So that's something we really want to try and do when we write our essays is really link all our paragraphs together. And for those of you who have looked in the resource, that's called theme and rhyme. If you've looked at that, how we start a sentence with the same words that were in a previous sentence. Now, if you're looking at me thinking, what on earth is she talking about, theme and rhyme? Go back to the Building Your Study Skills resource, and there's a little chapter called Creating Cohesion, and it's all in there. And that, I think, is probably one of the biggest, strongest building blocks for maintaining structure in your writing, developing that cohesion between sentences and between paragraphs. So where else does it link really well? Yes, so thinking about your line of argument. So we're going to be looking at introductions later on this afternoon, and in the introduction, you need to have what's called a thesis statement or a point of view. This essay argues that, blah, blah, blah. So that's your main argument. So how are you going to build that argument? And so when we're planning our essay content, we have to think about that argument the whole time. And so if we have paragraphs that jump from family violence to NGOs, the argument's getting lost. So we need a clearer link. Yeah. Okay, anything else in here? So we've talked about where there is a good link. We've talked about where there aren't good links. What else did you find in these paragraphs that worked well or need improving? What about the overall structure? Topic, evidence, and then summary, critique, so what? Can you see that in here? What I want to move on to now is thinking about being critical. So now that we've had a really good look at a paragraph and we think, okay, now I know a little bit more about structuring paragraphs, there was a critical piece in that last paragraph. So I want us to think about what does it really mean to be critical? And you may have read this in the resource, but I'd just like us to review it now. So if you turn over your page in your handouts, and you'll see a list of points, and I'd like you just to have a read through those. You may have already read them online, but just have a quick read and think, are there any here that I disagree with? And just have a chat with the people on your table. But it's basically creating doubt, asking the question, raising the issue, introducing a body of literature that answers the question, looking more specifically at that literature, and then finishing off with what I call the slam dunk, which is summarizing the main point and making a suggestion for improvement, or you're highlighting a gap or a contribution. So that's just one way that we found that you can do it. So there are other ways of building your argument. So that gives you a start. We're really focusing more in detail on your first assignment. So we're just going to have a look at the whole assignment. So this is really an opportunity to think about planning and your content and what you're going to include. And then we're going to just spend a little bit of time with the introduction just so that you have a start. Now, we've given you in your worksheets, and this was also on the writing an essay resource. Have you all had a look at that? So I just wanted to show you something in here because it relates to what we're going to talk about in your handout. So if you think about the word count of your essay, you've got 1,500 words. And, can I make that bigger? Have you all had a look at this? And you've seen this. So you can see how you can break down those 1,500 words, because someone asked me, how many words should a paragraph be? And that's a really good question. 300 words for a paragraph's too big, really. You get too lost, even 200 words, unless it's got a really strong topic and really strong evidence that has a process. Smaller paragraphs usually work better. 150 words. If you have a look at page 6, without reading it, just looking at it from a distance, that's what 150 words looks like. So it's basically your topic sentence, 4 middle sentences, and then your last summary critique sentence at the end. So that's just on average, but it doesn't mean to say every paragraph has to be that length. Some will be shorter. So for example, if you turn in your handouts to page 5, so it looks like this. So what I've done here, and this is again just a useful strategy for any assignment you have, Peter has kindly, what he's done for you is broken down what he really wants you to write about. And you don't have to write about them in this order. But the first one, point A, it says critically analyse the reform's impact on public value. Okay, so you're talking about impact. So if you think, okay, Peter wants me to talk about impact, if I think about how to split up my essay, maybe I shouldn't write more than 300 words. So if that's 150 words, so that's really only 2 points or 2 ideas about that impact. So when you look at this, you can think, well, how has the reform impacted on public value? 2 ways, 2 things. And so those 2 things are your 2 topic sentences, and then you've got evidence to support it. Does that make sense? And so breaking it down like that really helps to plan your essay just a lot easier and be more concise, and you won't go over the word limit as much. Does that make sense to you? So what I've done here is I've given you some questions to think about that impacts, for example. So what are the management strategies used to ensure government accountability? So what you can do here is just write. You don't have to do that right now, but in your own time, you can think, okay, well, what are the strategies? How do these strategies impact? So you might list, say, 3 management strategies, and then you could put all this in a lovely table, and then think, okay, what is the impact of that strategy? Is it having a positive impact or a negative impact? So that's a very, very basic way of looking at it. It might be a lot more grey. What kind of impact? It might be, you might have a nice while sentence. While the management strategy is proving to be useful in terms of blah, comma, and then you put in the issue or the problem. So does that help to just kind of break that down a little bit? So where I have written, you could focus on 2 points, you could write a short paragraph. What you're doing there is really narrowing the scope of what you're going to write about. So just a few points, not everything. And I've been having a chat to Cindy about her work, and is this okay to share? And Cindy said, I think I was thinking too big, and I think I need to narrow it down. And that's something we all do, and I've had to do that with all of my writing, everything I've done. And so this strategy can just really help you just to narrow things down and just think about what's really essential. Because it's only 1,500 words. It's not a lot. So what I'd really like to do this afternoon with this, I want to do 2 things. I want to give you an opportunity to talk with a partner about your topic and perhaps some of the points that you think you might make or what your argument might be. And the reason why I want you to talk about it is psychologically it really helps us to think about it. Because as we speak, we're thinking, and we want obviously to what we say to be intelligent. So we have to really think about it, and with talking about it, it's really helpful for us to really think through things. So I'm going to give you time, I'm going to give 10 minutes, I think, 5 minutes for each person to share with your partner, this is my topic, this is why it's important, I think this is my argument. Even if you don't think you have a really clear topic, you can talk about your ideas about the topic. Now, for those of you who are listening, obviously you can ask questions, like, so why is, what is important about that topic for you? What's important about that reform? what are the management strategies? So if you're stuck with, if you're a bit stuck with conversation, you can even refer to some of these questions. So challenge each other a little bit and be critical. And after we've each had a chance to just talk about what we're going to do, which I think is going to be really valuable, during that conversation, questions might come into your mind about this assignment and what you need to write and where. And then after that, we're going to have time with Peter, blast him with all those questions. And then after that, we're going to look at the introduction. Does that sound like a reasonable plan this afternoon? All right. So I'm going to go by that clock. So we've got about a minute or so. I'm going to give you a minute just to collect your thoughts and just think about your topic and the content of your essay. So you can write a few notes, and then I'm going to give you 5. So think about who you're going to work with. So people who have 5 people on a table, you may have to buddy up with someone from another table. And then you'll have 5 minutes each to talk. As we know in the introduction, we need to state what the issue and the problem is. Without an issue or a problem, what's the point of the essay? What's the point of the discussion? So we need that sense of question or doubt. But it's really the word these. What is...
been left out, like it's measured. And it's done a word...
Exactly.
It's done a word check, but it hasn't...
We don't know what these is. What is these? What are they referring to? So any words like this or these always go together well with a noun. So these measures, these strategies, this issue, this situation, this literature. Never start a sentence with this means or this suggests, because we don't know what this is. So yeah, so I think that's a problem I have there. Is there anything else that you thought, something's just not working for me here? So if you read your work, and I'm going to give you 2 editing strategies. Always print, never edit on your screen. Always print it. And number 2, no, I'm going to give you 3. Number 2, print it in a different font. So if you like Arial or Calibri on your screen, print it in Times, the opposite kind of font, and change the font size, because it will look completely different and you'll see it differently. And number 3, always read it aloud, because when you read aloud, there's something that happens in our brains. When we hear it, we hear things that we don't see. And you'll notice if your sentence is too long, because you'll be gasping for breath. And you'll realize there's something in the sentence is too long. And the reason why I suggested 150 words is because generally in assignments, 10% of the word count is introduction and 10% is conclusion. And I think that 10%, 150 words in your case, really helps us to be succinct and just not give too much context, just give the reform straight away. What's the issue? What's the purpose of your essay? Brief outline, and then what's your thesis statement? And just make it really punchy and concise. I'd like you to verbalize, not to me, but I want you all to verbalize this. So I'd like you to work with a partner for 1 minute and tell your partner something you've learnt today that you're going to use to take home. What have you learnt today that's useful for you? So tell your partner.